Hello, fellow writers. So yes, I am a slow drafter. It took me 2 years to finish my book, but I'm okay with being a slow drafter. I'm pursuing traditional publishing. If I were pursuing self-publishing, then I think it would be a bigger issue. I think that people who are doing self-publishing online have to really put out a lot of content in a short period of time, so they make their money off of publishing a book a month or a book every few months. When it comes to traditional publishing, patience is actually a virtue. So it's okay to be a slow drafter. Take Donna Tartt, who writes a book every decade. I'm not trying to be like Donna Tartt. I'm trying to be a little faster than that. But I say that as reassurance for those of you who are like me, who take your time with your drafts. However, of course, we all want to get to the end. We all want to finish that first draft, and it can be really challenging. And in my opinion, is the hardest part of writing the entire novel, is getting to the end of draft 0. So in this video, I want to talk about what my experience was in finishing the first draft of the novel that I'm publishing in 2021 with Macmillan. And I want to talk about and share some of the tips that I learned along the way of finishing that book. So first of all, my number one tip for finishing your first draft is to find your routine. I am a big believer in writing routines, and I think that it's exponentially harder to finish a first draft if you don't have one. I'm not one of those people who can write 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here, write a chapter on my morning commute. That doesn't work for me. I know there are people out there who do and can write like that, and more power to them, but I think for most people you need some dedicated time to get your writing done. For me, it takes 30 minutes just to sit down, settle my brain, and get in the writing sort of mindset. So I have a routine that I figured out during the process of writing Daughters of a Dead Empire, and that is every Sunday I go to a cafe near my house and I spend 4 to 8 hours at that cafe just writing. If it's a rough day, I'll spend more like 3 to 4 hours, with 3 is my bare minimum. On a good day, I'll be spending, 6 to 8 hours, but usually it's 5 or 6 hours is where I usually fall. This routine has worked really well for me over the past 4 or 5 years that I've had it. I have finished 5 complete novels, first drafts of novels over the past 5 years, and that is really because of this routine. My routine isn't just about where I'm going, even though it's very important to me to have a scheduled time and a place to go to that is outside of my house. It's also about the tools that I use and bring with me every time, so that I don't have to think about that at all. So for you, this could be your laptop. It could be setting up an app on your laptop, something like Self-Control or Cold Turkey. Those are 2 apps that allow you to turn off the internet while you're working, and I'll link to them below. They're really useful in avoiding distractions when you're typing away on your computer for your first draft. I don't draft on my computer. I do revise on my computer, but I write by hand for my first drafts. And so I use the same kind of notebook, the same kind of pen, and I stick to that sort of without fail. So I use these spiral-bound 70-sheet college-lined notebooks for my drafting, and as you can see, I'm kind of drowning in notebooks. This isn't even close to all of the notebooks that I have in my house, but that's okay, because the nice thing about using here, let me pull one of them out. Nice thing about using a short notebook is that, this is my current work in progress, is that once you get to the end, you can feel really proud. I can say, oh, I've completed the whole notebook, I've done that much writing, and it just feels like an accomplishment along the way. So that's why I stick to these short notebooks. I also use the same kind of pen, and I have been for years. I have been using, I don't know how this shows up on computer, but this is the Pentel RSVP pen, fine. It's like 0.7 millimeters, I think. Beautiful pen, writes wonderfully. I've been using this pen and nothing else for years. I am now looking for a new pen, so if you have any recommendations for something that doesn't smudge and writes really smoothly, please let me know in the comments. Most people aren't quite as structured as I am with the exact pen and the exact notebook and the exact place and the exact time that they do their writing in. That's fine. I think finding the time and place every week is the most important thing that you can do. Some people are able to do it every day. More power to them. I'm not one of those people who believes that you have to write every day or you're not a real writer. I'm proof, in my opinion, that that is not true. So I think that once you find out what works for you, you're going to be able to, and something that you can stick with, then you're going to be able to get through that first draft. The second thing that really helps me finish a first draft is figuring out my characters' voices. So if I've gotten like 100 pages into the book and I don't have a solid grasp of my character's voice, I'm probably never going to reach the end. That means I haven't conceptualized that person as a real person. They don't feel real to me. So for me, I know pretty soon whether I've got a character and a story that I can stick with. It takes me 10 to 20 pages, really one chapter, to settle on a character's voice. And once I have that, I can keep powering through with them to the end. So, in figuring out a character's voice, often their voice comes to me and becomes clear in a single line. So, for example, in my book that's coming out, one of the main characters, Evgenia, is a communist peasant girl. And it was really the first line I ever wrote in her voice that brought her to life for me. So she has just saved the life of Princess Anastasia, though she doesn't know who she is. And she's just saved her from this riotous, angry mob of communist peasants like her who are trying to set her on fire, basically. And so she's just saved Anna's life, and then the chapter switches into the next chapter, and the first line in Evgenia's point of view is, "The stupid bourgeois twit fainted," which told me everything I needed to know about Evgenia, that she didn't like rich people, that she didn't like people who were kind of weak and showed weakness, that it annoyed her, but that she was going to help this person anyway. So that told me all I needed to know about her. For Anna, or Anastasia, the line that I wrote in her voice that really crystallized her for me came in a scene where she's with all of her sisters and they're walking down a hallway and all of her sisters are sort of walking ahead and she feels sort of left behind in the back. And she calls out her sister Masha's name and she says, "Masha, come walk with me." And so Masha comes back and Anna thinks to herself, you know, Masha may have been everyone's favorite, but I was hers. And that told me everything I needed to know about Anastasia and her priorities and the things that bothered her and the things that were important to her. So, like I said, it really comes to life for me in a single line, and if I hit that character's voice and I know I can carry through, and if I don't, then 20 to 30 pages in, I know it's not really worth going any further. Okay, so my second favorite piece of advice is don't edit as you write. Don't edit your first draft. Just don't do it. Don't look back. Keep moving forward. Anybody who's done or is doing NaNoWriMo right now, that's National Novel Writing Month, you know how important momentum is. And I think that's true whether you're writing a book over the course of a month or over the course of a year or whatever length of time. Don't edit as you go. So many people get lost in endless revisions of their first draft. They'll write a couple chapters and then go back and clean it up, and then maybe write one more chapter and then go back to the start and clean all three up, and just never end up finishing their draft because of that. I think the best thing to do is not to edit until you reach the end. You actually have a sense of what the entire work looks like, the kind of structure you may have been going for but didn't achieve, the kind of surprises that came to you along the way, whether you are a plotter or a pantser. So I think don't edit as you write, wait till the end, and you will have a much better chance of finishing your first draft. The last thing, and maybe the hardest thing for me in finishing a first draft, is reminding myself that there will always be bad days, and that's okay. It's okay to have bad days. There are days when I sit down in the cafe and I look at my notebook and I just hate the thought of writing. The thought of putting pen to paper disgusts me, and I just don't want to do it. I think my writing is garbage and I just can't bear it at all. In those cases, what I do is I tell myself, you can have a terrible day. This is going to be a terrible day of writing. Maybe what you write will be garbage. That's okay. Let it be garbage. And I would say 95% of the time, then I end up writing and it turns out to be perfectly fine. And in cases where it does turn out to be garbage, I'm able to fix it in edits later, much later, once I finish the draft. So in my opinion, you know, let yourself have those bad days. I think that's really important, and sadly, angst is an essential part of the writing life. I don't know anybody who doesn't sometimes hate or at least seriously doubt their own writing and their own story. So I allow myself to have bad days and just remind myself and reassure myself that that's okay, and that's very powerful for me. One thing I will say is that if you're having more bad days than good days, like if I'm having, you know, 50% good days and 50% bad days, or more bad days than good days, then I know that my heart isn't in that project and it's not the right project for me. I think this is sort of a random number I'm pulling out of my butt, but like 25% bad days, that's really the max. Like as long as 75% of the days when I'm writing, it's a good day, I'm in the story, you know, I'm not hating it, you know, it feels like I'm moving forward and making progress, great. 25% bad days, that's just a cost of doing business. The only way to get through those bad days is to go through them. Most of the stories that I end up writing and you know, I'm having 90% good days. So those 10 days are kind of 10 bad days are a small price to pay for finishing the entire story. And I just let myself know that's okay, that happens. A good day is just coming down the road. On that note, you know, a writing teacher once told me when I was talking to her about struggling with a project, she said, you have to love your book to life. And she was absolutely right. If your heart isn't in it, if your love isn't there, then it won't come to life. It won't turn into something that feels real. And relatedly, Ira Glass has this great talk that he gave all about being a creative person and how when you're doing it, especially early on, everything that you do feels like crap. And sometimes that's true, but the only way to get better at it is to keep doing it and to, you know, make those gems along the way and get better over time. I'll link to his talk below. It's really excellent. And in the end, even if, you know, the bulk of what I've written in that first draft turns out to be garbage, as long as I've gotten to the end and I have a full draft to work with, I can fix it in revision, and I do fix it in revision, and that is a beautiful process and a difficult but really one of my most favorite parts of the writing process, and that is something I will talk about in my next video, my next step of this journey. So if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. Feel free to stick any questions in the comments, and I hope to see you at the next video.